So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is tags, right? So you can see here on the web page, we're going to go into tags under Docker. And so we've kind of been dancing around the topic a little bit, but I want to kind of get into depth with what tags are, why you use them, so on and so forth. So you can see right there, if I do docker run it node right there, and I leave off anything else, any sort of qualifier for that, it implies that you're going to put on the latest tag, right? And latest is one of the few tags that's actually like a special tag, right? It implies like the last one that you publish that is like the latest version of whatever you're doing, right? So this is fine in like when you're messing around, kind of like what we're doing right now. It's fine to just say like, cool, give me the latest, give me whatever the newest version is. But whenever you're making your environments or whenever you're doing anything like that, you want to have it like tied to a specific version, because I'm sure we've all had issues with dependencies before where they've upgraded and stuff broke, right? We want to avoid that. That's why in this particular course, I've been very careful to give you specific tags to download. Now you might ask, like, is there any like sort of like rhyme or reason of how tags are made? And the answer is not really. It's not like NPM where they're expecting like semantic versioning or anything like that. Docker tags are much more loose, right? It's whatever the author decides to name the tags. So an example of that would be like node:8 right here, right? Like, let's say I had something that I had an app that depended on node 8. I could say node:8, and this will give me like whatever the latest release of 8 is, which I feel much more comfortable with rather than the latest of whatever. Now, don't do this because node 8 is deprecated, right? It's no longer in service, right? So it's not getting security fixes or anything like that. But it's still out there. If you needed it, you could do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Docker Hub page for that. This is the Docker Hub page for the node container, right? And any one of these containers are all going to have some sort of Docker Hub page. So you can see here, these are all of the labels that exist for this, right? There are a lot of node containers. Now, why is that? Well, you can see here, you can request a lot of very specific things, right? So if I come down here, we've been asking for 12 stretch, which is this one right there. But you can see there's a lot of different things that all refer to the same thing, right? We could have referred to this as Erbium stretch, right? Because technically node 12 is the Erbium release of node. Not that you ever needed to know that, and I totally forgot that until I just read it right now, right? So it does have a name, just no one ever calls it that. But you could have referred that to as LTS stretch, which LTS is like node 12 is the latest LTS, right, for node. Or you could have actually just said node:LTS, right, which would have referred to the LTS of stretch or of Debian and the LTS of node. I'm still not going to recommend that, though. I don't think that's a good idea, because as that LTS rolls forward, right, when we move on to node 14 and Debian 10 or whatever the next version of Debian that's going to be the next LTS, right, that LTS tag is going to roll along with it, right? And if you build an app and then it's like sits on the shelf for 5 years and then you come back to it, that LTS is going to be very different, right? So these are the kind of things you want to be thinking through, is like, how can I capture this moment in time so this doesn't break in the future? That's what you want to do with containers. But there's other things here, right? There's like stretch slim, right? So far we've been downloading the full Debian, right? But we could say 12-stretch-slim, and by their definition, there's no special definition of slim, but this will give us a like a more slender version, like a smaller version of Debian, right? In general, you want to have the smallest container possible for several reasons, and there's a whole section on that, so we'll get to that later. But there's even beyond stretch, right? There's Jessie and Buster, and these are other versions of Debian as well, right? You can also see here that we can run it in Alpine, right? So I can say, give me node:alpine dash, whatever, right? And all of those versions exist as well. What else is in there? There's even chakracore down here, which chakracore is actually the JavaScript engine that's baked into Microsoft Edge, the old version, right? And they took that and they put that into Node. So instead of running V8, which is what's in Chrome, you can actually use chakracore. Now, I don't recommend that even as someone that works at Microsoft, because we don't even support Chakra anymore. We're moving to Chromium as well. So suffice to say, there's a lot of different versions, and so it behooves you to go through and figure out exactly which versions of what that you want, right? To figure out the right tags. I think the one that I gave you is a pretty good one. If you give it stretch, right? If there's more security patches that come out later, you want those, right? You want those to automatically be incorporated into your containers. So that's why it's good to pin it to stretch, right? And then I think it's good to pin it to 12 because as minor and patch versions come out, you probably want those as well. But if you want to mess around with like node 13, you can totally do that, right? So you can see there, that's what latest is, right? It's 13.3.0-stretch. In case it wasn't obvious, each one of these lines, these are all the same container, right? They're all various tags for the same container.
I guess how do you decide which one do you want? I know you mentioned it depends on your needs, but is there some kind of rule of thumb? I know you just mentioned that stretch is a good version, but does every container have sort of like, hey, here's kind of like the default one. When in doubt, pick this one.
Yes, so I think there are good rules of thumb. For something like this, like a node container, and this could apply to Ruby or something like that, I would go find the latest LTS for the Linux that I'm on, and the latest LTS for the like Node or Go or whatever I'm on, and then tie it to that, right? So that's why I did 12 stretch, because those are the two latest LTSs for both of those. Now, if I'm just messing around with something, I'll just do latest, because I want to play with the latest and greatest tech, right? But you don't want to ship like Node 13 right now, right? That's considered the current version of Node, which means that they're experimenting and things like that, but there's no promises that it's not going to break or anything like that. So that's why it's good to be on 12 for like your production workloads.
So when, for example, like 12.13.2 comes out, is that another entry in this list, or do like patches get overwritten or like overwrite this kind of list, or
right?
Because it seems like there'd be even more than this if it was every single patch version ever.
Yeah, so you could definitely tie it to like a specific patch release if you felt that was important. I would not suggest that.
Right. I guess I was mostly asking because like if you created it with 12.13.1, like do you just want to say like 12? I guess is my question, like the major version, and then leave off the minor and patch.
Yeah, so if you leave, like if I tied it to like 12, like 10, right, or whatever we're on right now, 12.13. So if I did 12.13, it would bump up to like 0.4, right? But it would not bump up to like 12.14, right? It would keep it on 13. So there are more versions here than are even listed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. It's important stuff for you to know, right? Like it's important stuff to like know how to tie it to the correct versions of what you're expecting. And every like Docker page is going to have these for you. So there are people that would disagree with me that I do 12 stretch. There are people that would say like just do 12.13, right, dash stretch, because they would keep it to the same minor version. I think everyone would universally agree it's a good idea to let patches roll forward no matter what, because that means you'll get the security patches. I would assert that I've never had a minor version of Node break what I'm doing. They're pretty good about like major versioning with Node, so I have a lot of trust in them, and I work with them at Microsoft, and they're very careful about it. So, but it depends on how much you trust the authors of the container, right? If you're based on someone, Joe's, Crab Shack and Node container, right? Then maybe you trust them a bit less, right? It just depends.